What kind of names are we in France? What is going on? Why is it straight lining? Why is it straight? It's so bad. It's been almost a month since the universally well-liked and not controversial RoStock Racing revamp came out. Let's talk about the good, bad, and ugly about the RoStock Racing revamp. If you haven't seen my previous videos about this subject, I would highly encourage watching those if you haven't already. With that being said, let's begin. Let's start with the good. I guess what little risk the game had of being taken down due to copyright is now gone, obviously. Despite the limitations the paint booth still has, I'd say it's a plus, at least for me, especially once more designs get added. I'd also say ELO is a good thing to have in RoStock as it discourages low wind grinding. The catch-up mechanic from my experience is actually pretty balanced. The game, at least from my experience, does in fact run smoother, which is a huge plus. The UI in some areas looks better, I guess, but I wouldn't call it good. I really like being able to view other people's cars in the lobby to see what designs they're rocking. And I also like the fact that the game's being updated more now than it has previously, which is also a good thing, considering how much the revamp has improved since its release. And I can't stress how far we've come since the initial release of the revamp, but I'll get into that later. Now, let's get into some stuff I don't really like about the revamp after playing it some more this past month. Gameplay is still not where it needs to be. Like I stated in my previous video about this subject, the gameplay has gotten much better since the release of the revamp, and I've had actual fun whenever I race around people who know how to drive. Gameplay has probably been improved even more since making this video, which is a good sign. My good friend Chameleon is doing the Lord's work right now with the setup, so shout out to him. But again, it's still not where it needs to be. The bump draft is still horrid, but a small step in the right direction. I'm hopeful we can at least get some elements of the aero push OG RoStock once had into these revamp cars. That would be very nice. We're also missing some visual effects OG RoStock once had with these cars, like the dirt particles, the tire smoke, and the sound, as well as the grass making your car slick, which is good or bad depending on who you are. Also, still no side draft, but I hope it gets added back at some point and further improved upon from the previous game. I was hoping we could at least get a small increase in server size, but maybe that's something planned for the future. It might be a really small thing, but I would really like the AFK indicator we used to have in OG RoStock added in the revamp. There are countless times where I go into AFK mode whenever I design a scheme and forget to turn it off, causing me to miss the next race and then have to sit for the next 5-10 minutes in misery. So it'll be very nice if the indicator got added back. I feel like races, especially long races, are way too long. Like 8 laps at Brooklyn's outer circuit on the long preset is crazy. That's another thing I'll get into later. The worst thing about the race lengths is that the longer races don't even offer any bonus incentives or rewards, so there's literally no point in playing them from a monetary perspective. Not to mention the pain new players have of joining a lobby and waiting 5+ minutes for the race to start. I feel like shortening the races and adjusting some of the race lengths to be more reasonable would be a good idea. Track selection is still fairly limited, at least compared to the old game. I like how the quality of tracks is more consistent now, but it's still not where it needs to be. I'm well aware that more tracks are being worked on and added in the future in order to meet these supposed higher standards for the revamp tracks. I also don't like how there are no sounds when you click around in the menus and buy stuff. I know it's like a really small thing, but like, why is it not in the game? Like every Roblox game has it at this day and age. And speaking on the subject of UI, although it's better in some places compared to the old UI, it's still not up to par to most modern Roblox games. I still don't like the positioning of the leaderboard. Maybe it's just me, but I really hate how it covers up the player list. I actually find it super useful to figure out the skill of some of the people I'm racing around and who's in my game. I spoke to George about this. He said it's because it blocks the mobile controls, which is fair. I guess, but I wish PC players had the leaderboard GUI in a different place instead of the top right blocking the player leaderboard. VIP servers, from what I've heard, are no different than public servers, which is a huge downgrade from what we had before. Again, I'm well aware that VIP server features are being worked on, but this should have been put in the revamp to begin with. I wish we had more player stats, as I believe even the original game had more stats, like how many races you won at each track. This is an area that I believe should be expanded upon more. Like, for instance, it would be really cool to get a graph of your elo progression, race wins, laps led, and what tracks you have won at, etc. Now, it's time for everyone's favorite part of the video. This video is sponsored by roracing.com. If you want to find a league, watch RoRacing content, get free assets, or buy racing accessories, visit them through the link in the description. Let's get into the ugly. I know this isn't a huge deal to some, but I feel like the thumbnails and game icon for the game look super mid and unappealing. Like, compare this to Backsearch Battles. This just looks very low effort. Not trying to harp on this too much, but first impressions are everything. And this, to me, doesn't give good first impressions to new players, at least in my opinion. Looks like something out of like 2019, 2018. Like, I know I'm exaggerating, but that's how it feels like. So, quick update. The game icons changed to be something much better, at least in my opinion. These thumbnails look a little better and more clickable, but it's still behind games like Backsearch Battles or Pamu Talladega. I hope George didn't hack my computer and see the script and decide to fix up the thumbnails, otherwise we'll have a problem. I digress. And further on that subject, the RoStock revamp, I believe, fails horribly at attracting new players to the game, though virtually every Roblox NASCAR game that isn't Backsearch Battles or just Daytona is guilty of this. Think about it. When a new player joins in, they are greeted with the lobby, and that's basically it. With some races taking upwards of 10 plus minutes, that's a recipe for disaster when trying to retain new players. I wish there was more stuff to do while waiting for races, besides either spectating or making schemes. New players can't even do much with schemes in the first place besides what? Change the color of it? Maybe I'm wrong. I'd say that's an area that could at least use some work to even further improve retention. I even suggested this for the original game, but RoStock Racing could really benefit with a beginner's tutorial, teaching players new stuff like how to design your scheme, basic racing etiquette, like not full sending every corner, and hell, maybe throw in some driving missions players can do on the side for prizes, like time trials, passing through checkpoints. This all might sound super ambitious and unrealistic, but I strongly believe adding stuff to do besides making paint schemes while waiting for races would greatly help with bringing in new players to RoStock Racing. And my biggest gripe about the RoStock Racing revamp is still the fact that I don't believe the revamp needed to come out as soon as it did, especially in the state it was in at launch. Was George really worried RoStock Racing was going to get taken down immediately when NASCAR hasn't done shit to Roblox NASCAR games like ever? I'm not questioning George's move to make RoStock Racing 100% copyright free. I actually agree with his philosophy in regards to copyright for the most part, and I actually commend George for taking the time and effort to try to fix the vast amount of copyright problems the original game had, since every owner before basically neglected copyright and has gotten away with it so far. But at the same time, I feel like making your game 100% copyright free with little to no references to real life on the surface is definitely a downgrade on that front. At least in Backsearch Battles, you have schemes that vaguely resemble real life, while RoStock, for the most part, feels kind of generic in my opinion. I've seen some really well-made schemes designed in RoStock, but not everyone has time to spend 15-20 minutes making a scheme, on top of trying to acquire all the pieces and numbers to begin with. I'm still baffled by the fact that the revamp was greenlit in the state it was in, although I'm mostly over the stat wipe and losing the original game essentially. I feel like there were better ways to handle all this without pissing off 99% of your community at the time. I still strongly believe the revamp launch is a slap in the face to any longtime fan of the game. This whole thing just seems forced upon us without much regard for the original game. Regardless of what you think about copyright or whether or not the revamp was necessary in the first place, releasing the revamp in the state it was in was just unacceptable, and it should have been delayed further. We literally waited 10 plus months for a game that was borderline playable, if even. And again, I'm giving George and the RoStock dev team credit for greatly improving the revamp as a whole since launch, but I feel like the damage has already been done. Ratings for the game have dropped 2% overnight, probably because most of your player base had no idea the revamp was coming out in the first place besides a minuscule advertisement that appeared in the lobby. Much of the confusion at launch, I feel, could have been addressed if some pop-up appeared when you first launched the game, telling you all about the revamp before it came out. We were not even given an exact time for when the revamp would launch. It just happened out of nowhere. Further proving my point about how the revamp was forced upon us and how little George cared about the original game, at least to me. And the fact that I still believe there were many better ways to handle the release of the revamp than what happened. Like delaying it, not releasing it in the state it was in. That's simple. Is the RoStock revamp even an improvement over the original game? Like, yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the worst thing ever, especially now, but in its current state, besides the paint booth, I feel like it's still a downgrade for the most part. An incomplete game that needed a couple more months to finish. I feel like the RoStock revamp could have definitely benefited from an open beta test, so we wouldn't have seen the sheer amount of problems we saw at launch. So yeah, those are my unbiased thoughts on the RoStock revamp, almost a month in. The game itself actually has some potential, but much of the criticism comes from the fact that the original game was taken away from us. Not saying change is bad, and there are many things the RoStock revamp does right, or at least better, but I'm hoping continued work and improvements are made to RoStock Racing. Things are still not where they need to be, but I have faith in the next few months, much of the stuff I've mentioned in this video will be addressed. I still don't fully agree with how things were handled, but what happened happened, and there's nothing we can do about it now. Not gonna say any names, but some people in the RoStock community, I feel, have no life and are way too obsessed with this game and need to touch grass. I'm probably not gonna make any more videos covering the subject unless something major pops up. Just hoping for the best, and yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on the RoStock revamp now? I'd like to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. If you want to see more videos like this, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and all those would be very much appreciated. And have a good rest of your day.